Hi, and welcome to the 14th episode of Keen Minds. I am Jen, aka Takata Saeko,
And I am Tessa of Criminally Sane.
and today we are focusing on, we're starting in on the task force and their evolution with the Keens, with Tom and Liz. We're starting in with the Boy Scout himself, Donald Ressler, who is consistently one of my favorites of the show. I flop back and forth between he and Red as my second favorite in the show. But I do have a very soft spot for Ressler, which was very hard earned, I'll have to admit. I had no soft spot for him at the very beginning. But he's really grown on me as he's grown as a character, and I am very much a Ressler fan now.
I tend to have a more critical look of Wrestler. However, I like him. And if this were a different show, probably Wrestler would be my absolute hero. But I'm a I'm a red. What can I say? It doesn't come any darker gray than me. So I love I am very intrigued by the character of Wrestler because he's absolutely essential for the show.
He is, and I feel like his growth comes in sort of an odd format, and you've talked about it quite a bit, Tessa, where he rubber bands badly.
Hmm.
Where you see him grow, expand, he pushes his limits, and then all of a sudden he's snapping back. And we see that again and again throughout the show, and he's getting better. He is learning on certain things, he's expanding in certain things. There are huge moments in his life where he has to make those decisions. Sometimes he does it correctly, sometimes he doesn't. But either way, Wrestler has always been a very interesting character.
Yeah, I think that the most interesting thing about Wrestler is that he's really motivated by this momentous event in his life when his father was murdered by a corrupt partner. And it's amazing how that narrative came to thoroughly define somebody and give him this view of I gotta adhere to the light, to the rules, to what is correct, what must be done, and have a natural distrust of everything gray, everything that is nuanced. He takes such refuge in the rules, and he is, is a very necessary thing. You couldn't have a world in which everybody would be a gray character. That would be basically chaos. The law and order, it's black and white, and it's this is correct, this is not correct. And in that sense, if you didn't have Wrestler to counteract Red, it will all go, you know, pretty bad into hell life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting in season 3 when he came up and talked about Tommy Markin and everything that had happened. I remember making a gif of that comment that he made when he was explaining Tommy Markin. I said this explains everything. Like I had already decided I liked Wrestler by that point, but it for me he really clicked there. It's everything that I didn't like about him in season 1 made so much more sense to me. And that's how the blacklist really is that even if you make a judgment on a character, you get more information later on that you have to kind of reevaluate. I know that with Redemption coming up, I've had several people ask me, well, what do you think about Solomon? This man threatened a child, he did this, he did that. Do you think he can be redeemed? I said, I know if I was the writer, I have no way to redeem him, and my brain will not stretch that far for him. I said, but the Blacklist writers have surprised me so many times with so many things that they knew were coming, but when they come, they just come out of nowhere for me personally.
Mm.
And I feel like that's when things start falling in and making more sense. They happened with Tom, they're happening with Liz as we find out more about her history, definitely happening with Red right now as we learn more about Katarina, and they happened with Wrestler and probably will continue happening as we learn more about him. But Tommy Markin for me put Wrestler very much in a view of this is why he has so much trouble trusting.
Yeah, And not only that, it was he also has it's funny because there is a lot of times when the instance of Ressler have been noted, most of the time on a negative connotation, but it is truly not like that. He truly has a much better um, sense of 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 what something is not completely right that we give him credit for. I mean, he knew that he distrusted Liz, and with reason, because the Liz that was presented at the beginning, that little Miss Do Good, that was by the rules, that was an act, and he called it.
He's got good gut instincts.
Yeah. And he had the same thing with Tom. I don't think that he knew what it was wrong about him, but he felt something was wrong.
Yeah. And so, starting at the beginning, something interesting that I've noticed over time when you look at Ressler in the through the scope of the Keens together and separately, he starts out with Liz, as you just said, very distrusting, very questioning. I mean, it takes him several episodes to get to a point where, I mean, the stew maker is the first episode where he's really nice at all to her. They have that when he goes in and helps rescue her, and they have that hug when he gives her the blanket there. But even after that, he's still questioning her. He's still not trusting her. He's still going to Cooper and going, she put her gun down. You know, it's a very tattletale sort of. I mean, and I know it's not. I know it's higher stakes than that, but that's kind of how it came off, that,
Mm.
it's here are the rules. There's no room to move with the rules. Even though the situation was, you know, a very tense situation, you didn't obey the rules, so I'm going to go tell our superior on you. It was
Yeah.
kind of how it came across. And that distrust of Liz, I think, almost had to start out that way for them to build the kind of partnership that they have, and even that got them through everything in 3A. And I know a lot of people were upset in season 3 with how Aram was pushed as her good friend and such, but I do think there's a very deep friendship between Liz and Ressler that's formed over 3.5 seasons.
I think so. And I think, I've never been of the opinion that there was anything romantic there. I know that you, for a while, thought about that. Gotta be honest, I never saw that. I saw him um, maybe learning to understand her a little bit. And certainly, Liz was very Liz showed him affection and understanding and the same forgiving nature that she has. When he started with the pill addiction, and I know a lot of people hated the pill addiction, I actually liked it. It made sense. It's a common thing, it happens a lot. You are in pain, you're taking sleeping pills, you're taking pain pills, and it is so easy to get addicted. I like that. And she showed him compassion. And I think that Wrestler hasn't had much compassion in his life.
I think that's probably very true. And it's also the fact that he doesn't handle his emotions very well. And he told Samar when, after Samar lost her brother again, he said, right after Audrey died, he was at the office the very next day. And that explains so much about why he went to the pills. They were how he pushed down
The pain.
both physical and emotional pain. He doesn't like to deal with that. He doesn't like to dive into it. And that's one reason that he likes to lean so hard on those rules, is because those are structured. Emotions are messy. They don't always react the way you expect them to. They don't always make sense, and they're just messy, while rules are very black and white. And I think he likes that structure. He prefers that structure because he feels like he can control the situation better, and not in a bad way. I'm not feel like that always comes across when I call the characters controlling, but they live in this world, this heightened reality, where that control is a necessity.
Yeah.
He needs control over the situation, or else he could get himself or his partner shot and killed.
And I think that Ressler was one that had very strong suspicions from the moment that Red surrendered that Liz was Red's daughter. I think
Interesting.
that nothing. There is a few things there when they're looking at it, he misunderstands the criminal father and thinks he's Sam, which makes no sense whatsoever. But then you can see him like he's starting to get a little suspicious there, and you see how Liz turns and say, "What 5 years got you what?" And push back hard on him and effectively shut him up. There was not much he could say about that. But I think that for Ressler, that defining obsession with Red was really about getting the guy who killed his father. To me, Red became this officer who he was. It's like a heightened father. He's an intelligence officer turned traitor, and there is no worse than that for Ressler. And he's trying to get him. He has an opportunity to take him down, and he misses. I don't think Ressler missed. I think he was not about to do against the rules in that assassination attempt in Brussels. So when they come and and Red surrenders, doesn't ask for him, that's such an insult. And then you see that first scene with you have Cooper, you have Liz, you have Red teaching them to think, and you think that how Wrestler is like, this is nonsense. I'm not even listening to this. And it's a very interesting dynamic in that very first episode to me. Very much defining of who Red is, who Wrestler is, who Liz is. Liz is starting to think like Red, and Cooper is really entertained by all this. And Wrestler is like, this is nonsense. That's not how we solve crimes. And when they get the guy, he's still suspicious of Red. And I think that is a very interesting thing and very smart thing of Wrestler. He always distrusts Red. He always knows Red had something up his sleeve.
Well, it's even in season 4, right after they was it, they called him the coroner, I think. Was it the coroner? Is that what they called him? The
Yes,
guy
the
that,
core.
yeah,
Yeah.
with the coroner, that he comes in and he was very reminiscent of season 1, where he started fussing at Red and saying, "You weren't even after this guy. You were after this other name. You used us." And Red said, "Yeah, but you've got this guy. You've got all the names he has. It's win-win." And Wrestler's going, "No, I will find. I will track you down. I will find everything out. I will not let this slide." It was very reminiscent of season
Hmm.
1, Red and Wrestler, and it was kind of nice to see. I mean, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, such and such season was the best. We need to go back to that because these characters have evolved. They've moved forward. You don't
Hmm.
ever want to go back. Well, there are some things that you might be nostalgic from a pilot episode or a first season of a TV show. I don't think you ever want characters to fully go back to where they were in the pilot because that would mean they regress so far.
No, and Wrestler has advanced and grown quite a bit. I mean, the Wrestler of season one was, you could see why he never caught Red. He never caught Red because he can't think like Red.
He can't think outside
He
the box.
Yeah. And the Wrestler of season four, it's a man who had understood that the world is not black and white, that there is a silver lining in everything bad, and that you can get good things from a criminal, and maybe it's okay.
Well, I think
And
Audrey really threw him for a loop because he told Jonica when he was standing over him, telling Jonica, to basically commit seppuku, and he said, you know, Reddington brought Audrey back into my life. The man I hate brought the woman I love back into my life, and then my best friend took her away. His world was so flipped over on its axis, in which the good came from Red and the bad came from someone he trusted.
again, a crooked cop.
Yeah, another crooked cop. But I feel like there have been little things like that have continued to push him further and further and further to the outskirts of his, black and white sort of outlook. He still wants to do that. He still, would like to be that way, but he's learned too much over these last 3.5 seasons to ever go back to that fully because he understands that sometimes you need to give to get.
Yes, and that is a concept that was very foreign to him, and the rubber banding, especially in season three, and you understand why season three got into that aspect of Ressler, of the rubber banding, like, oh, we got to go after Liz, we got to go after Liz. And there is something interesting in that book. I haven't read it all the way again, but he talks about being weak, and he has to follow the rules, not be weak, and he's trying to get Liz, and at times he seems angry at Liz, and at times he seems like he wants to protect Liz. And I think there's all it wasn't at the time. I thought, oh my god, they don't know what they're doing with him, but after a while I think that they are. It was rubber banding. He was trying to protect her, and then no, she's a bad cop, bang,
Well,
man.
you and I view that time period a little bit differently. I come at it from the point that I think Ressler thought he was protecting her by bringing her in. If he could just bring her in, if he could just get her away from the sole influence of Reddington, get her out of the situation, get her back into the system that he trusts, then because he knows that she is not a terrorist, truth will prevail, basically. And he had all the faith in the world in that, and he believed that he could protect her best by being right there and walking the right path. While what he didn't understand was that the path that he thought was the right path was so far corrupted by the people on the inside, way up the food chain,
Mm.
that what he was seeing as the black and white path was really deep in the gray by that point, and he just didn't realize it. And I think once again that's another point on the journey that when he found out that Hitchin.
Hitchens was
Oh, and that's gonna
a
come back around. I'm gonna love it when it comes. He just every time he can, she just gets under his skin to the point that I don't think he can stop himself. He just needs to tell her he's gonna take her down, even when it's like, Ressler, sweetheart, stop. She knows. Don't antagonize the person unless you have the information to take her down.
well, Ressler is a very impulsive character.
Yes.
It is. See, I never saw in the chasing of Liz, because Ressler had distrust of Liz, and then started to trust her. She was doing good work. You could see that she was advancing, and he thought, oh, I got her under my wing, I will get her to be a person by the rules. And meanwhile, he knows that she's not. She's doing all these things with Tom. She's looking for the evidence, she's doing all these things, and then she turns around and murders the attorney general after he let her go.
I think he felt very personally responsible for that because he let her go. And I mean, if she had just run, it would have been one thing. But she turns around and murders him in cold
Mhm.
blood. I mean, the man wasn't armed.
Well,
Regardless, well, not
he wasn't
physically
armed with a
armed.
gun,
Yeah,
he was armed with the law.
he was not physically armed, but and so I think Ressler felt very responsible, and I think that's one of the reasons he pushed so hard at that point because he felt like
He was
he was
disqualified.
making amends for what he had done wrong as well. I mean, kind of like we've talked about with so many things with Red, with Tom, with Liz, that you don't have a flat reaction with any of these characters to things that are going on. They're deeply layered. They're very not confused. They're very
Conflicted.
conflicted. It's because they're human. These writers have not given us flat characters that have cookie cutter reactions to things. Where a novice writer might come in and say, "Oh, well, you know, here is the single reason that Ressler went after Liz." Well, that may be a major point, but these writers are giving us multiple layers of what's happening because he's human. He has a lot of conflicting emotions. There's a situation of Liz that's going on, there's a situation of Reddington, everything in the past with Reddington, both what we've seen on screen and what we haven't in the 5 years he was chasing him with Jonica and the rest of them.
Hmm.
There are so many facts and histories going into that. Whatever you're focused on, whether it's the chase of Liz or if it's something else, they're layered characters. There are multiple reasons why they do what they do and react the way
Mm.
they do. And the writers are very good about, even if you can't see it in the moment, you get
You
back
will
to it.
eventually.
You
Yeah,
get back to it. And
yeah.
just like when he said, "This is what happened to my father." It clicked, the light bulb goes on, you go, "I get it now."
Ah,
And you reevaluate.
yeah. And I think that for him, in my view, for him, Liz became the even more than Red. I mean, Liz had been a cop turned bad, murdering people, and I think that even if at times he remember that it was, that Liz was a good person, I think at some points she he just couldn't get away from, she's a dirty cop with the dirtiest of them all, Reddington, and they just took advantage of me. It's like my father
Yeah.
was murdered again and again and again.
You have to wonder if it went through his head, after he let her go and this came out that she had murdered Tom Connolly. Had she planned that? When I let her go, was she planning this? Was this something in the works? Was this something she and Red had said? He had no idea about Cooper at that point. He had no idea what was going on. He had no idea that she was going to run. I mean, because an hour before she murdered Connolly, she was ready to hightail it out of there.
Hmm.
Hop on Tom's boat and leave.
I think that Liz was very furious, even more than her own blaming for things. I think that Cooper really was the tipping point. I mean, once she found out that they had they had made Cooper do things against his integrity, I think that was very angry Liz, more than herself.
No, I thoroughly agree. And I think it was that combined with the idea of Connolly and his people doing that to Ressler, to Aram, to Samar, to anybody in her life
And
that she.
Red was
Yeah.
she's very protective of Red, but I think she was also very protective of the entire. And I think that goes back to that night of the fire in Liz. And I think that is something that Wrestler has never quite understood. And I think that, as we progress into seasons, I think we will see Wrestler address more that part where she murdered Connolly to protect them. Because I never saw. I mean, I saw when Wrestler served for what is worth. I believe you were framed. I think that was the actual moment when Wrestler 100% realized that Liz had not done those things. Because put yourself in his place. Suddenly, you're seeing evidence saying that her prints were in that van, that the prints were in the bombing thing. She was there asking about a Russian spy, and and he says, why would a Russian agent have information about your mother? Liz had not been sharing any of this, and suddenly all of this is coming out. She's not Liz Elizabeth Keene. She's Masha Rostova. She's a sleeper spy. Her mother was a spy. Suddenly, everything must have looked pretty bad to him.
Yeah,
He was played.
especially with the past that he has with his father and his partners. Yeah, his father's partner. Absolutely. And I mean, he's human. It's an emotional response, and like I said earlier, emotions are messy, and so when things get messy, he tries to go back to the law, which seems cleaner cut.
Yeah. And he also had the worst time when he was put in Cooper's shoes, because he is absolutely the wrong man to be running that kind of operation. mean, Ressler is a by the rules, and to run those things, you gotta be a politician. You gotta be able to walk different lines and be able to give to take.
Yeah,
You know?
and it just and he acknowledges that, early on in 3B, where he takes a step back and he acknowledges it through. And
Hmm.
he went and talked to Cooper that one time where they were sitting there drinking together, and he said, I never knew how hard it was. And, what was it always as hard for you? And Cooper's like, I never would have admitted it, but yeah. And I think that Ressler got his eyes open with all of that, and that's one of the reasons he took a step back, is he's going, this isn't my spot. I need to be an order taker, not an order giver.
Mm. Yeah, I also there's a moment in Wrestler that I absolutely love with Liz when she's saying that she's going to go and take responsibility for Ames' murder and all that, and he tells her, um, how many families have been buried? A mother, a father, a brother, sister, children. And Liz says, that doesn't make it right. No, it's never going to be right. See, the only question is the body count. So you go ahead and nail yourself to a cross. And while you're up there feeling sanctified, you consider how many people are going to die because this task force gets shut down and the rest of those animals on Reddington's list are still out there feeding. Says, don't ask me to feel your pain. I got more than enough of my own. I think that that is one of those very, very rare, and that was a moment. That's probably one of the best moments to me because it's raw and he's just being absolutely brutally honest. He hates Red. He doesn't like the Greys, but he gets what they're doing,
Yeah. And
and
I
it's
think that's been
killing him.
it's been a learning experience for him. It's gone from season 1 of it's my job to keep you alive to we're actually doing good here.
Mm.
Yeah, I
And
definitely
understanding that the world is not necessarily clear cut when it's corrupt at the top. And I think that, and this is my take on what they're going to go with Wrestler. Either Wrestler will end up murdering Hitchens and going on the run and having that experience on his own, or Wrestler will be the one that they use to explore, as they use Tom to explore the story of Katerina by making a mirror of what Liz and Tom were going through and how Red was looking at that. I think that Wrestler might be what it's used to explore what happened to Red in those 4 years.
and that would be fascinating for because I mean they have so many mirrors between Red and Ressler as it is, starting out with the blood type and just various bits and pieces that have shown up over time with the two mirroring each other in certain ways. That to use that would be fascinating. I would love for them to do that.
And I think that I am my prediction of how it ends in the blacklist is that it will be Wrestler taking Cooper's place
But you
as
think he'll be
Cooper
ready?
retires.
You think he'll be
Yes,
ready?
yeah, because the story of Wrestler is a story of understanding that the world is not black and white, that they are good in the bad and bad in the good, and it's just how it's the body count that matters.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it for him, when you get down to it, is the humanizing. That he doesn't when he doesn't trust someone, he doesn't want to look any deeper. We saw that a lot with Tom, with his journey with Tom. Just to kind of go through
Mm-hmm.
that because anybody that knows me from Tumblr knows how much I love my Tesla bromance, and and I
When
posted.
we're fun together, and
I
then we have no, oh boy, no gate. Whoa, that was hard.
Gnome Gate.
Yeah, no gate.
But yeah, I mean, you've got, and it actually mirrors in a much longer format what happened with Liz. The extreme distrust in the beginning, and then a slow understanding that there's more to than what the eye sees. But with Wrestler, I think that because you have the day of Tom and Liz's wedding, you have him telling Liz, he laid hands on you I get that you're moving past this, but that's not something I can ever move past. I'm not, that's not verbatim, but that's the basic quote.
Hmm.
And I know that one, it was cool because it was a nod to a lot of fans that have issues with the spy on spy situation that we had in season one with Tom and Liz. It was acknowledging, hey, we hear you guys on this. Here is our response from the writers' room. It's really cool that they are that intuitive and listen that closely to the fan base. To the online fan base, which is, in my opinion, kind of set apart from the general audience, because the general audience is not. We are not the general audience. We pick
Hmm.
everything to pieces and then put it back together and see how all the pieces fit. We are the nerds. But anyway, and so with Tom, he went from that to after Liz quote unquote dies, as he's watching Tom with Agnes. He's snarky, he's difficult, they work kind of, back and forth at each other, but by the time that they get to the christening, Tom's calling him family and Ressler's kind of giving him the nod of acknowledgement. And then
Mm.
you move into 4A, where you find out Liz was not dead, and Ressler's the lone person that understands this. Ressler now,
Were you surprised by that?
I loved it. I thought it was perfect. That
Me
Ressler
too.
was the person. Like, I wanted it. I didn't know if it was going to happen. But when they came,
And the reasons for it made so much
mm-hmm.
sense to me.
but anyway, the Ressler. I feel like with the Tom scenario, I feel like Agnes really humanized him, because every time Tom came to him in 4A and said, help me with this, Ressler's like, listen, dude, that's against the law, would you stop with going against the law? And Tom would go, this is for Agnes. And Ressler would give. I think Ressler's a man that lost his unborn child. He lost his fiance, he lost his child, he lost all of that. And here is his partner and probably one of his best friends in the world, because I don't get the impression Ressler really has a life outside of the task force.
He
And
has
so that,
sports stuff.
but I'm saying like friends, you
But
know,
he was alone in the hospital, and he even says, I was there sitting in the
uh-huh.
hospital alone for days.
Exactly. And so I don't get the impression that he has friends that he communicates with often outside of
It's
the
hard
task
to admit.
force.
It's hard for people that are black and white to have
Hmm.
friends.
But and so that when you get to the christening, he spent this time with Tom, and he sees this. I was saying that, Liz is probably one of his closest friends, and this is his best friend's daughter, his best friend's husband. Even if he doesn't particularly like Tom, I think that he's become more than just the spy that married my partner and they got into it in their living room. Because to be fair for Ressler, he doesn't know Tom's past. There's no
No.
reason that he would know it. He walked in after seeing this man go through and beat an interrogation with Mira Malik, of all people. And he probably blames Tom for Mira's death. Probably blames him for Cooper's near death. And he walks in, and Liz's townhouse is in shambles. I mean, if I walked into a good friend's home and her husband and she had gotten into, I mean, I would unleash. I do not hold it
Mm.
against Ressler how he reacted to Tom, because he didn't know him. I feel like Agnes was that point where he had to get to know Tom as Tom, not as the operative Tom Keene. And once he did that, kind of like with Liz, when he started getting deeper with Liz and started getting to know Liz, and so that's when the trust starts to build. Someone on Tumblr the other day made the comment that there can't be a bromance because there's no respect there. I disagree. There is a lot of respect there, because you have Tom talking Ressler down from making a mistake that they both know is a mistake, of killing Solomon in cold blood, because that's not Ressler. It's the same thing as when Liz went to Red and said he can't kill this man in cold blood, talking about um,
Ressler and Tanita.
Tanita. And he said, you can't kill this man in cold blood and walk away the same. It would have been the same way with Solomon. He can't just shoot a man in cold blood and walk away unscathed. He would be so terrible. And I think that would break Ressler in a way that would not be it would not help to put him back together in the right way. And we may see that coming forward. If he ends up doing that with someone like Hitchin, we could see what that sort of breakage would do to him. And
Mhm.
that kind of breaks my heart to think about.
And he knew what to say.
Yeah, but
I think that it's easier for Liz or for Tom to say the right thing to Ressler, or to that it is to Cooper, because I think they both have been there. I think that Cooper have walked a very narrow path, and not a very narrow path, but and he had gone in a little bit in every direction, but he has mostly stayed on the main. That's why he got to race to the top that fast. I understand of Ressler's distrust of Tom. His instincts were 100% correct that something was wrong with Tom Keen. The nerdy school teacher. He knew it, and he was right. And he was also right in distrusting Liz, because Liz is not a do-goody agent. And he's always been right about distrusting Red, in the fact that Red always has an agenda behind anything that he's saying he's doing. So I think that in that sense of Ressler having those excellent instincts, is also Ressler not, sometimes he goes by the book, and by the book you become linear, and when you want to look at this complex situations, you got to go beyond linear. That's something that Ressler has got a lot better since season 1, when he was like, oh, you dropped the gun, to Ressler in season 4, when Red says, I made a deal with the devil, you didn't. I think that he's starting to understand what Red is doing. Red will do something, and he will not back in out of his word, because he said to Esteban that he was going to let him go and get him safe passage. He didn't say that he was not going to let anybody chase him. So I think that those little moments that we've seen with Ressler, like giving access to the books, or giving the stuff to for Tom, or he fabricated the evidence to get a look at Kirk's file, all of that has been major things for me. And I think it goes into the nature of what is forgivable and what is unforgivable. And each character, like each person, will have their own brand of forgiving and unforgiving. There are things that you can't forgive, that you can't get past. And there are things that you can. And you cannot force them on all of the characters that you meet, because then the world will be very flat. So I think that Ressler may never get over the fact that Tom and Liz had a fight. Um, but he has got over the fact that the world is not as black and white, and he has made giant steps, and in doing so, he has become a far more interesting, far more warm character. And I would not be surprised if they bring a romantic interest for him, because he's becoming softer and less rigid. It would have been very difficult for him to have a relationship with anyone, because it's like having a relationship with a priest. I mean, do you really want to do that? It's like every single thing to be like, oh my god, I sin here.
Yeah, I agree that, and they had to bring someone in from his past when they did have a very short romantic arc for him, which was Audrey. And then poor girl doomed her from the beginning.
She got
But
off the car. She was impulsive like Ressler.
to be fair, she slammed her head like crazy. I don't think she was thinking straight. But neither was Ressler, because if he had thought that through, if he'd been able to put his emotions down, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame him. I mean, I would have been going haywire too. But if he had thought past his emotional reaction, he would have realized that Tanita didn't go after any of his former partners' families.
Yeah,
That
the safest place for Audrey was as far away from
Yeah,
him as possible.
yeah. Like, he could have had someone else go pick her up, take her to a different location, to her family's house, to, somewhere else. But he needed to stay away from her. But he had an emotional reaction, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not like it was.
He's a hothead.
Yeah, and he is. And Liz pegged him on that, and in
Yeah.
I think the pilot, second episode, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
It's early
It,
on.
yeah, it's a fascinating, and I want to say to the big wrestler fans, I don't hate wrestler. I know that some people think I do. I don't. I just think that he is who he is, and I tend to have a weakness for Red and people like Red and Tom. So you gotta understand that in that I gotta be a little more um, eh, critical of Russell. But I like him. He's a great character, and he's gonna do fantastic things. And my view is he's going to be the character used to create the parallels to what happened to Red in those 4 mysterious years that we have never got anything out of them except he rescued Dembe.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I really hope they go that way. And I think that they've done a really good job. They had some trouble balancing characters in 3B, I think, as they were trying to situate themselves with Liz and Megan's pregnancy and everything. I think it was a little bit less balanced. They've done very well in 4A of balancing all of these characters because it's an ensemble. It's a very small ensemble, but it is an ensemble show. And they've done a really good job of balancing them out.
Well, I think that we also needed, I think that a lot of people think, Tom took wrestler's spot uh, in airtime. No, at the time, I mean, if you look at it from now, the perspective of what we know, they needed to use Liz's pregnancy to show you what happened to Red and Katerina. And the way to do that was with Katerina's mirror, which is Tom. and and for that they needed to focus there. I think that that story has been almost told, and now we're going to focus on some other aspects of the mystery, but it was needed, and he got a very big role on 3A and a much smaller on 3B, but it makes sense. He was upset with Liz came back, she got exonerated. His world was upside down. He wasn't happy with Tom. He wasn't happy with Liz. He wasn't happy with anything. It's normal. You get such a shock, and the world doesn't quite look the same anymore.
Yeah, and as things start to even out with the task force, they'll even out with Ressler. So all in all, I Ressler has done some amazing growth through it, and it's been fascinating to see his role in this little family that they've created. This awkward family that from time to time tries to kill each other. so, and I loved that comment because it's true. I mean, like, Tom and Liz they didn't have family in the traditional sense, especially Tom. It's the fact that Tom would claim Ressler as family, coming at it from someone that tends towards getting into Tom's head versus other people's. I can say that's a very deep thing. To be able to claim someone
Mm-hmm.
that says so much for the respect the two men do have for each other, because you looking at Tom the way he was raised, he probably is not a big fan of cops. And what was it? Red said
The Boy Scout, and that
yeah.
scene when Tom is under the truck and Wrestler comes, you owe me. That gonna be the one of the best scenes, because that is, I mean, that's gonna come up. He's never gonna leave that one down.
And I can't
Um,
wait to find out what he calls him on. Because it's gonna be something that just makes Tom squirm, and I'm gonna love it. I'm a terrible Tom fan. I really am. I want to see him squirm on that. I want Ressler to put something on him that he would never do on his own in a million years. Because I think Ressler is, and I'm going back to my Tesla because I love those two as friends, because heaven help us, Tom needs friends that are not going to shoot at him, you know?
all the time.
All the time. It's either kissing or shooting. It's always that way with Gina. No, but Ressler and Tom are the types that could push the other out of their comfort zones. Tom is deep in the gray. Ressler prefers the black and white.
They both are very into work.
Yeah,
They love their work, and they have a very important work ethic.
exactly.
Even though, yeah, different
Different rule
book,
books.
yeah, but at the same dedication to the work, which is an important thing that they both do.
Exactly. But these men can push each other to do better in different ways. And
The
so
gnome should have waited a little longer to be there.
Poor gnome. And I love that the ghost gnome came back for him. Like, he
Oh, yeah.
just
And he looked
stopped.
at, yeah. That was such a great moment. They just put it in there. It was supposed to be a joke, and they just left it because it was so much fun.
Oh yeah, I think that I really do think that they get such a kick out of how the fans react to things. I think they listen to us. I read one time that they have someone on staff that goes and pokes around social media, and I gotta wonder what they think about us sometimes.
Oh, you don't want to know, probably.
Yeah, we might be a case study.
For nut jobs.
I did say we. I include myself in that.
Me too. Yeah, I agree.
All
I agree.
right. Well, let's go ahead and shift into Cooper. We're gonna do Ressler and Cooper for this episode, and the next episode will be Samar and Aram. And so Cooper has had a very, and we touched on him with Ressler because there's so much that intertwines in all of this. And
Mm,
with Cooper, he's such an interesting role because at the beginning you see him as this authoritative figure that is just unshakable. I mean, it's Harry Lennox. Harry Lennox is just that voice.
yeah, that voice and
He's
the
just
smile. When he
yeah.
smiles, just
I'm just that unshakable image, that you get with Harold. And as things begin to unfold through the series, you find out that he's not so much unshakable when his health is declining, when his marriage is in disarray, when his team, who he's very protective over, and I love how protective Cooper is over his team. When his team's in trouble, he will move heaven and earth to make it right. And the way that he views Liz, the fact that he goes from being fairly distrustful of her for same reasons as Ressler, this woman who is not on anybody's radar gets, she suddenly is coming into a black site because fourth most wanted on the America's Most Wanted list wants will only speak to her. But Cooper Cooper's growth through it. I don't know so much that it's growth in his emotional status as it is kind of an unfolding. I feel like we've peeled back layers for him, if that
well.
makes sense.
There. I have a very different view of Cooper. Very different. I have watched I have done a complete rewatch on Cooper alone. Just watching his reactions, just watching what he says. Um, I have basically just taken his dialogue and dissected it. I don't think I've ever posted any of it, but I am thoroughly convinced that Cooper knew from the very beginning, before Red surrenders, that Red was going to surrender. He knew who Liskin is and who is she to Red, and that he has a far deeper understanding of all of this that is happening that we have even known. So I think the big story on Cooper is still to unfold. I mean, I think that we just build a little bit, like you said. There are a few layers. He's not unshakable. He seemed to have been one of those guys that even though he was working ungodly hours, and he says in this job come first, second, and third, and he never stopped to think what that felt like to Charlene. I think when he discovered the affair, his whole world just crumbled. As the rock behind him was Charlene, and when that wasn't there, the man just he crumbled. He wasn't the same, and it's funny how Red tells him, forgive Charlene. Nothing is unforgivable.
I One of the things I love the most, and I know we're focusing more or less on the Keens, but I have to throw this in here, is I love the growth between Red and Cooper throughout
Mm-hmm.
the time because you've got the pilot episode, oh, someone of power has shown up, you know I could smell the what's the line? I
Mhm.
smell the stench of your cologne. It smells
It
like
smells like
hubris.
yes.
And just that snarky. I mean, he's just like with everybody else. He's just downplaying. Were you wrong? Well, at least it's not new. It's again and again. He just takes shots at people's intelligence. Because Red's the smartest man in the room, and he usually is. To be fair to him. And then you've got in season 4 that lovely, lovely conversation when they're in the bunker, talking about talking about Liz and the fact that Red is smothering her, that she feels smothered, and the
Hmm.
fact that he goes to Cooper with that is just perfect because Liz even says at one point, compares him to a father.
Hmm.
Compares Cooper to a father. She
When
loves
when
Cooper
she's about
dearly.
to get married, yeah.
Even I think even before that she does. She at least talks about how much she respects him and how
Yes.
much she cares about it. When you
The
know when
person that the good person that
hmm
she was, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so the fact that Reddington is willing to admit that, and you have to kind of wonder if Red's a little jealous over that. That here's this man. If Red is her biological father, he gave everything up to try to keep her safe, and Cooper's the one that she's calling, her father figure. On some level, I kind of wonder if, but he goes to him. He confides in him. He talks to him and bounces ideas off of him. It says a lot for the relationship that has been built between the two men, and
Well, you
that
also have
growth.
that lovely conversation at the end when he thinks Liz is dead and he's going to kill Kirk, and he says, I know why people that work with you admire you.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives that great speech about, wake up every day and make a determination what is right and what is wrong. And I think that is, if I had to describe Cooper, is that, I mean, he's not a zealot. He's always making that determination, and that's why he's able to walk that gray lines without compromising his morals. And the funny thing is, even though he does have a little bit of a moment in which he compromised who he was, and is that beating of Alan Ray Rifkin,
Mm-hmm.
uh, of in the judge, in which he actually did beat up a confession, and he says he was guilty. Yes, you still beat up a confession, and he did it at the instigation of Connolly's, and then Connolly betrays him so deeply that leverages his health, and he thinks he's dying. Then he gets Charlene to commit treason. And I find it funny that Cooper cannot forgive Charlene for the affair, yet he thought it was absolutely fine that she actually committed treason for him.
Yeah.
So there's always any character in the blacklist is never a character that you can say, oh, this is just a shining example of perfection. None
Yeah.
are.
Well, they are human, and the writers have just done a fantastic job of making them that way. It's easy as a writer to flatten out a character. I need this. Okay. Well, you make that. But then you have to remember to add all the extras in there that make them a human being, not just the character that
Mhm.
fits the role you need. And they really have done just a phenomenal job with it. So
Yeah, because
apparently this is a Ressler, Cooper, and kudos to the writers episode.
yeah, because there, and you gotta say it to the actors. You gotta say it
Mm-hmm.
about the post production. They create deeply layered characters. There's nobody. I took an inventory of every character, and there is none that you can say, oh, this is so perfect. No, they all have a bad side. They all have, Nick. Nick has the most questionable morals. The man leverage. Oh, I can take it out if you pay me 300,000, 364,000, even to the pennies. Uh, he has a temper. He's, for sale. Every character on the blacklist has their weak spot. They're human when they're less than perfect, when they're even despicable. And I think that a lot of the people who don't like the Keens together, or don't like Tom, tend to forget that whoever character they worship is not perfect either. they all have a something that makes them human and less than perfect. And that is the beauty of watching a show like The Blacklist. But I
It's
think Cooper, to me, it's, one of the most pivotal characters, even though we haven't seen very little of him. I think that there is still there, we're going to see very deep waters moving there. And I hope is soon.
yeah. I really hope so. I've really loved the way that they've grown him with Liz, like we said, with
Mm,
the growing into the respect there. And something interesting, I talk a lot about the fact that Liz didn't smile a great deal in the second half of season one and well into season two. Like she,
except,
yeah, but she gave the brightest smile when Cooper walked back in. It
yes,
was
that was a
great.
beautiful scene.
And because why is everyone so excited? What's going on? Did we find out we have a new boss? And Cooper walks in and she just lights up. I mean, she's had such a rough day. I think that was the same day she was signing the annulment papers. I mean,
She
she
got her
just,
hair cut.
yeah, just such a rough go during that point. And Cooper walks in and it's like, it's this look like I can keep fighting, you know?
Yeah.
She really does respect him so greatly. And
And
I love the way that they built him with Tom,
oh,
because you can tell when he
best.
goes that he doesn't want to like him, because he sees Liz somewhat as a daughter figure, you know, and he wants to be protective. He knows part of the story, much like Ressler does, but he
Mm,
also knows the kind, you know, that these people can be useful, and he is, you know, you got to give to get. And so he hands Tom the file and says, you know, I don't trust you, I don't like you, this is how I see you, but you can get the job done. And it's funny because whether he would have or not, and I personally think it's the time that he spent during the debriefs and such,
mhm.
he starts getting, you know, worried about Tom and cares about Tom. And by the time you get to the end of three, you know, towards the middle and the end of 3B, this man is speaking at Tom and Liz's wedding. He's consoling and talking to Charlene about what they can do to help Tom with Agnes. It's, you know, it's very sweet how he warmed to Tom. And I think that Tom needs those kind of men in his life. I mean, granted, at 30 years old, you're kind of over the pivotal years of having good role models, but better late than never. I mean, to have people that he can work with that are
Mm.
not, that can understand him and how he works, and yet can help him strive to be better as well.
I think that see, I defer a bit there. I think that Cooper never really had that kind of let me use Red's word, disregard for Tom. I think a lot of people take that scene when he goes to the restaurant and says, "I don't trust you. I certainly don't like you. You're a liar, a thief, and a murderer," which is exactly why you're perfect for the job. I I looked at that and I said, he may have known that he's a liar. That's a funny way of saying you're undercover. Being undercover and telling lies is like, it goes with the territory. That's like saying you're graceful because you're a ballerina. Yeah, it goes with the territory. A thief, he has no idea, no way of knowing that. Tom Keane had no, unless for some reason Cooper has an access to his records and knows who it is. He has no record. There's no way of proving he's a thief. We don't even know if he was a thief. In a murder, well, they know that she killed Jolene, but not really. They got suspicions. I don't think that what Cooper was doing. That Cooper is an intelligence guy. He came from naval intelligence. He's not a cop. He's an intelligence guy. He was establishing control over an operative by telling you, I despise you. You're going to do what I want. This is what I don't see that as a being personal. He was using Tom as an operative. This is what we're going to do. Um, you're going to do that. And in fact, if you think about it, when Ressler comes and talks to him before, and he says, you should follow your instincts. He's actually quoting from LA Confidential. That is a direct quote from LA Confidential. A man that would put a bullet in somebody's back, a guilty man who shoots a guilty man on the back to prevent him from escaping. Actually, that is a quote of LA Confidential when they're talking about an undercover cop who will shoot a guilty man in the back to prevent him from. It's not exactly like that. It's like a free quote is uh, to prevent him from getting his lawyer to get him off or something of the sort. But I don't think that Cooper had the same disrespect and distrust of Tom as most people do. And I know that I am in a pretty lonely place thinking that.
Well, I don't know if I mean he obviously had a little more trust in him because he was willing to send him in alone. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like he was wired or anything. But I mean, he sent him in on something that was pretty big. They needed Karakurt. Karakurt was a key to it, and
And he didn't put him personally. It wasn't just for Liz.
yeah,
Cooper was pretty mad. He had lost his rank. He had lost his badge and possibly everything that he had worked his entire life just because he was standing next to Liz when she shot Connolly. The
yep,
the snake who had set him up, who had made him commit treason, who had made him betray his team with his health and then with Charlene. He lost everything, and he was counting on Tom to get him
yeah.
out of it.
Yep, and so he put a lot of faith in him, and I think that faith was rewarded, and that's why he continues to work with Tom moving forward into
Mhm.
4A. And so Cooper's been a very interesting character to me. He's probably the one that I know the least about. I don't know if that's fair to say. I love Cooper, I do, but I love all the characters, so it's hard to pick. But I mean, you obviously most people don't know in depth every character, and so I mean, unless you're Tessa, and then
Unless you're crazy, you can say it. It's okay.
well, last week I called you heartless. This week I'm calling you crazy. I mean,
I know. It's okay. This, I agree. The heartless thing stung a little, but this is okay. I get it. That's a little
heartless
insane.
is a little far. Crazy's fine though.
Yeah, crazy's okay. Hey, I've got the craziest theories, and I know that they're crazy. You know, I have to say more often than not, oop, I was wrong. I thought for sure that Tom had a third employer. By now, it's pretty clear he doesn't.
Have you finally moved on from the Red is Tom's father? Or are you
Yes,
still okay?
I had to.
Yeah.
See, thank you. You called me on that one. Yeah, it was a great theory.
It would have been fascinating. And what I said when you came up with that one was I like it if they had set Liz and Red up differently from the get go. I would have been totally behind it. But
Unless
I
unless Red is not really Liz's father.
yeah, but it's in the general viewers' heads now. And like I said last week, it just gets a little squicky there. Like it's little close there, and people
I do
don't
think that Red
general
is Liz.
audiences of primetime TV are not big fans of incestual leanings.
No. I think that that's been debunked. It was a fun theory. There are a bunch of, I mean, it was a great theory. It was
Yeah,
super fun.
I'm
But
not calling your theory incestuous. Just to point that out, that was not.
I don't know because in that
Okay.
in that theory, Red, was not Liz's father. But it was fun. It didn't work out. I was wrong.
Well, I was convinced back with the Keen wedding. I was because we had a very short hiatus right before it. I spent that like 3 or 4 week mini hiatus, utterly convinced that the wedding was to draw somebody out. That the wedding was not legit. That they were just trying to draw either Katarina out or Bud out. I was 100% convinced, and then it happened. I went, well, never mind.
It's the nature of the beast. Is they give you the herrings and they give you the clues, and it's tough to know which is which.
And sometimes we come up with our own herrings.
Overanalyzing a bit, might you
Yeah,
say?
yeah, I've
Yeah.
done it before. I know some
Mm.
others that have
I've
done it.
never done that in my life. I have like 2,000 and so posts of not overanalyzing anything. So
Yeah.
I think that pretty much finishes up for
Yeah.
Ressler and Cooper.
And so
Um,
next week, which will be the week the week of the show coming back, which we're super excited about, and we're also super excited that Redemption is bridging, and we don't have to bust our butts
with two
double time.
podcasts a day, yes. I mean, we may have to do a ginormous one the when we get the double episodes. But I am dying to get in there, and I guess we'll just keep calling it Keen Minds.
I'm game for that.
Yeah.
So, but next week, which will be the week that it's coming back, so after New Year's and everything, we will be touching on Samar and Aram, and how they have evolved with the Keens and such. And then we'll be back to the show, so we'll be podcasting on each episode as they come around.
And if you have missed any of our previous series of the hiatus, go back and look at them. We did the analysis of Red and Tom, and then we went into Red and Liz, and we went over all the difficult bits, the gun to the head, the uh, every single one of them, and we analyzed them, not skimming over anything. And most of the time we go in more or less the same direction, but we don't see eye to eye completely in all this. So there were some interesting discussions there. So if you haven't seen them, if you haven't listened to them, go back and take a look and or take a hear, and we will see you or on the next one, which will be next week,
Yep.
when we'll take Samar and Aram.
Yep, and we're on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. And please feel free to leave us comments. We love to hear from you guys. It's gone kind of quiet over hiatus, so we know people are listening because we see our numbers. But it's gone kind of quiet. Feel free to start discussions on. We've got Facebook, we've got Tumblr, and Twitter. You know, you guys know that we're around. You see us on Tumblr. You know we'll answer. And so feel free to jump in, start a conversation, ask questions. If you hear something you have a question about.
Yeah, and if you have a question about this episode that we would like to have us answer on the next one
Mm-hmm.
about Ressler or Cooper, please feel free to leave us a note.
Absolutely. And we will talk to you guys next week. Bye bye.
Bye.